The refs tried everything, but Indiana still crushed Atlanta in the most controversial playoff game of the season, and when Aliyah Boston finally broke her silence after the victory, her words exposed what really happened behind closed doors that night. This wasn't just any playoff win either. This was Indiana's first home playoff victory in almost a decade, and it came with 5 players sidelined, including their biggest stars. What unfolded at Gainbridge Fieldhouse left the entire WNBA stunned, and the aftermath is still sending shockwaves through the league. If you're ready for the truth about what went down, drop a like right now, because this story gets wild. The tension started building before tip-off when fans realized just how stacked the odds were against Indiana. 5 key players were ruled out, including fan favorites who normally carry the offensive load. The Dream walked into that arena thinking they had an easy target, but what happened next would flip the entire narrative. From the opening possession, Indiana played with a fury nobody saw coming. They scored first defended like their season depended on it, and before Atlanta could even call a timeout, the Fever had complete control. For the first time since 2002, Indiana went wire to wire in a playoff victory, meaning they led from start to finish without a single tie or lead change. That level of dominance in the playoffs is almost unheard of, especially when you're missing half your rotation. But that wasn't the whole story, because what really set this game apart was the defensive masterclass Indiana put on display. Atlanta came in as one of the league's best three-point shooting teams, but Indiana's pressure turned them into a completely different squad. In the first half alone, the Dream shot 1 for 10 from beyond the arc, and by the end of the night, they finished 5 for 19 from three-point range. Their entire offensive rhythm was destroyed, and every possession looked rushed and panicked. The way Indiana's defense suffocated Atlanta's shooters was almost scary to watch. They weren't just contesting shots, they were getting into passing lanes, disrupting timing, and forcing the Dream into uncomfortable positions all night long. What happened next would shock everyone watching, because Kelsey Mitchell decided this was her moment to take over. Playing in her first ever home playoff game, Mitchell dropped 19 points, including 4 crucial three-pointers that stretched Indiana's lead every time Atlanta tried to make a run. Without their usual offensive weapons available, Mitchell had to create her own shots and draw defensive attention on every possession. She embraced that pressure and turned it into the best playoff performance of her career. The crowd at Gainbridge went absolutely insane every time she touched the ball, and you could feel the energy shift in that building. Mitchell wasn't just scoring either, she was facilitating, making smart passes, and keeping the offense flowing when things got tight. Meanwhile, Aliyah Boston was quietly dominating in ways that don't always show up in highlights. She finished with 15 points, multiple rebounds, and 3 assists, but those numbers don't tell the full story of her impact. Boston controlled the paint on both ends, forcing Atlanta's bigs into difficult positions and creating space for her teammates to operate. Every time she caught the ball in the post, the Dream had to send help, which opened up shooters on the perimeter. Her defensive presence altered shots at the rim and changed Atlanta's entire game plan. This was the Aliyah Boston that Indiana fans have been waiting to see in the playoffs, a dominant force who can take over games without forcing anything. But here's where things get really interesting, because rookie Michaela Timson came out of nowhere to provide the spark Indiana desperately needed. In just 9 minutes of playing time, Timson scored 9 points with aggressive drives and confident finishes that you rarely see from a rookie in the playoffs. She entered the game when rotations were thin and immediately brought energy that shifted momentum. Those 9 points weren't just empty stats, they came at crucial moments when Indiana needed someone to step up. The fact that a rookie could perform like that under playoff pressure, with everything on the line, shows just how deep Indiana's talent runs, even when they're short-handed. The atmosphere inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse was unlike anything we've seen all season. Fans weren't just loud, they were fierce and passionate, creating an environment that gave Indiana a massive home court advantage. Every defensive stop brought the crowd to their feet, and every made basket felt like a dagger to Atlanta's hopes. The energy was so intense that even players on the bench were standing and cheering for the entire game, feeding off that crowd energy. This was more than just a basketball game, it was a statement to the entire league that Indiana wasn't going away quietly. What really sealed Atlanta's fate was their complete inability to adjust to Indiana's defensive pressure. Head coach Stephanie White had clearly prepared her team perfectly for this matchup, exploiting every weakness in Atlanta's offensive sets. The Dream tried everything, switching lineups, calling different plays, even attempting to slow the pace down, but nothing worked. Indiana had an answer for everything Atlanta threw at them, and by the fourth quarter, you could see the frustration building on the Dream's faces. They knew they were being outplayed in every aspect of the game, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Natasha Howard deserves massive credit for her performance too, because she did all the dirty work that doesn't always get recognized. She finished with 12 points and 5 rebounds, but more importantly, she provided the toughness and physicality Indiana needed to match Atlanta's intensity. Howard was battling under the rim on both ends, fighting for loose balls and making the extra pass when needed. Her veteran presence was crucial in keeping Indiana composed during Atlanta's few runs, and she made several key plays down the stretch that sealed the victory. The post-game reaction was where things got really revealing, though. When Aliyah Boston finally spoke to the media, her words captured something deeper about this Indiana team. She talked about resilience and fighting through adversity, but there was an edge to her voice that suggested this team had been doubted for too long. Boston mentioned how they've dealt with ups and downs all season and how good it felt to finally come out on top when it mattered most. You could tell this victory meant everything to her and the entire team, especially after what happened in Game 1. Speaking of Game 1, the controversial officiating from that loss was still fresh in everyone's minds. Fans walked into Game 2 carrying anger about calls that felt one-sided and moments where it seemed like the deck was stacked against Indiana. There was one particular call on Lexi Hull early in Game 2 that had everyone fired up because she played perfect defense with her hands straight up while backpedaling, yet still got called for a foul. It was like the refs were trying to set the same tone as Game 1, but Indiana refused to let officiating determine their fate this time. The strategy Indiana employed was brilliant in its simplicity. They came out aggressive from the jump, establishing physical dominance, and never letting Atlanta get comfortable. Every screen was set hard, every defensive rotation was crisp, and every offensive possession had purpose. This wasn't just about winning, it was about sending a message that they wouldn't be pushed around anymore. The way they executed their game plan was nearly flawless, and it completely neutralized Atlanta's strengths while exploiting their weaknesses. Lexi Hull's contribution shouldn't be overlooked either, because she provided crucial minutes and hit some massive shots when Indiana needed them most. Playing in her first home playoff game, Hull showed no fear-taking and making shots that kept Atlanta's defense honest. Her energy on defense was contagious, and she made several hustle plays that ignited the crowd and her teammates. This was the kind of performance that shows Hull is ready for the biggest moments and can be counted on when the stakes are highest. The Dream's frustration boiled over multiple times throughout the game, with players arguing calls and coaches burning timeouts trying to stop Indiana's momentum. Nothing worked, though, because Indiana had completely taken control of the game's flow and rhythm. Atlanta's shooters, who normally thrive on getting into a groove, never found their touch, and their offensive sets looked disjointed all night. The defensive pressure Indiana applied was suffocating, and it forced Atlanta into bad shots and turnovers that led to easy transition opportunities. What makes this victory even more impressive is the context surrounding it. Indiana hadn't won a home playoff game in nearly a decade, and they did it while missing 5 players, including key contributors who normally play significant minutes. The fact that they could dominate a quality opponent like Atlanta under these circumstances proves this team has championship DNA. They didn't just win, they controlled every aspect of the game from start to finish, leaving no doubt about who the better team was on this night. The coaching masterclass from Stephanie White deserves recognition too, because her adjustments from Game 1 to Game 2 were perfect. She challenged her team to play with desperation and urgency, and they responded by playing their best defensive game of the season. White's ability to get this level of performance from a depleted roster shows why she's one of the best coaches in the league. Her pregame message about playing every possession with desperation clearly resonated with her players. Looking ahead, this victory completely changes the dynamics of the series. Atlanta now has to go home knowing Indiana can beat them even without a full roster, and that psychological edge could be massive in Game 3. The confidence Indiana gained from this performance will carry over, and Atlanta has to be questioning whether they can match this level of intensity. The pressure has completely shifted, and now the Dream are the ones who have to respond. The individual performances were spectacular, but what really stood out was how Indiana played as a complete unit. Everyone who stepped on the court contributed in meaningful ways, and there was a connectivity to their play that we haven't always seen this season. They moved the ball with purpose, defended as a team, and supported each other through every possession. This was the kind of team basketball that wins championships, and it came at the perfect time. Boston's leadership throughout the game was evident in how she directed traffic on defense, communicated with teammates, and kept everyone focused during timeouts. She's evolved into the emotional leader this team needs, and her presence on the court gives Indiana a foundation to build around. The way she controlled the paint and made smart decisions with the ball showed maturity beyond her years in the league. Mitchell's ability to take over when needed while still keeping teammates involved is what separates good players from great ones. She picked her spots perfectly, knowing when to be aggressive and when to facilitate. Her 4 three-pointers came at crucial moments, each one feeling like a dagger that pushed Atlanta further from any comeback attempt. This was vintage Kelsey Mitchell, showing why she's been the heart of this franchise for years. The crowd's impact cannot be understated because they were the 6th player Indiana needed. Every defensive possession was met with thunderous noise that made communication difficult for Atlanta. The energy in that building was electric, and you could see how it lifted Indiana's players, especially during crucial stretches. This is what home court advantage is supposed to look like in the playoffs, and Indiana's fans delivered in a massive way. As the final buzzer sounded and Indiana secured their dominant victory, the celebration was about more than just one win. It was about proving doubters wrong, showing resilience in the face of adversity, and establishing that this team won't go down without a fight. The way they responded to Game 1's controversy with such a complete performance shows championship mentality. If you think Indiana's run is over, you better think again, because this team just proved they can beat anyone on any given night, even when the odds are stacked against them. Subscribe right now if you want to see what happens next in this incredible playoff series, because Game 3 is going to be absolutely insane.